Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Welcome to the Presson Leadership Forum. I'm your host, Webster Twambo Jr., the chairperson of the Presson Foundation. Today we have an interesting and exciting discussion. Those of you who've been following us, our guest today, we featured him early in the year. And today we're doing part 2. Do let us know that you're watching from across the world, wherever you're joining us from. Please, we would appreciate if you can just signal to us that you're following us. And if you can get us loud and clear, please signal. At least let me have at least one person to confirm that loud and clear as we proceed. You might be talking to yourself. I just want to make sure that I'm not talking to myself. And before I introduce our guest today. So I'd like you to confirm that you're getting us loud and clear. And today's program will most likely be the last program in 2020. So it's going to be exciting. Yeah. So do let us know that you're watching in the comment section. Just confirm. Type in the comment section that you're getting us loud and clear. And this program is live on the Presson Foundation, both the Facebook page as well as the YouTube channel. So live on Webster Twambo Jr. Facebook page. So I'm going to introduce our guests today. All right, Mundia watching clear. All right, thank you, Joshua Piri. All right, thank you so much for those confirmations. All right, I think we are ready to roll. So today we are. I was trying to go through his profile, and it was just too much. I had to just pause and say, okay, I'll ask him to really try to give highlights of his profile. So maybe in summary, this is how I'll just summarize his profile. Certainly one of the top 25 intellectuals from Africa to grace the world stage in the last 2 decades. Professor Kenneth Mwenda's richness of thought is displayed in the depth and breadth of his trend-setting intellectual contributions. His ICs have largely, but not exclusively, been in the field of contemporary and comparative law and Africa's development. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome Professor Kenneth Mwenda. Professor, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Webster, and good afternoon there in Zambia.
It's good to have you. How are you doing up there? Is it up? Where exactly are you?
Yeah, temperatures are relatively cold. Yeah, I'm on the east coast of the U.S., Washington, D.C., Maryland area. We had a bit of snowfall the last 2 days or so, so we're still coming out of the cold temperatures. And just keeping it low because COVID numbers are a little bit on the high side. So it's always good to be cautious and stay indoors if you can.
Awesome. It's good to have you, Professor. And this is the second time we're hosting you. It's really an honor to have you on this program. Thank you so much for making it.
My pleasure.
Yeah. All right. Now, Prof, I'm not going to pretend. I was trying to go through your profile. And I just mentioned earlier on that if I tried to attempt to do that, I'll take the whole day. But in a nutshell, Professor, looking at what you have achieved, what would you consider the most or the best accomplishment so far, and why? Let's begin from there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Webster. I've got a page. My profile is on my page for those who've never interacted before. So if you just Google me up, you get to my page where you find my profile. So I won't go into details on that. But in terms of accomplishments, I think the most important thing for me, looking back, is when you're able to give back to society. So my greatest accomplishments are basically the students who've gone through my hands, as well as my work that I do with my current employer, development projects. When you see that you've delivered a project, you see the people benefiting from the work that you've done. I've been with the World Bank. This is my 22nd year. You know, I've worked in many countries, Eastern Europe, Middle East, and so forth, and Africa as well, South Asia, East Asia. So, you know, just the fulfillment of seeing that you're making a difference in the lives of people. To me, that is very fulfilling. There is nothing more fulfilling than that.
I love that. All right, now many people, even those who are watching today, you know, have been following your page or on Facebook. It's full of musings, and I think in the lead up to this discussion, in fact I refer to you as the master of musings. What drives you? And you know, day by day, it seems your followership, the interaction with your followers is getting better and better. So what drives you to sharing those musings?
Yeah, public intellectualism. As you know, I sort of have a dual career path. On the one hand, I've been with the World Bank, like I said, this is my 22nd year. On the other end, I started off in academia. I taught at Warwick University in England. Before that, I taught at University of Zambia. And I've continued to teach. I've taught at American University, extraordinary professor of law at University of Pretoria. I've taught at University of Cape Town. I teach at University of Western Cape. And I've taught at Miskolc University in Hungary and all these places. So basically, the issue or the idea of public intellectualism is one which takes you away from the traditional classroom setting or academic environment, where now you begin to distill those ideas, the concepts that you deal with in sort of in a classroom pedagogical environment, into real life experiences. How you connect that with reality, with practice. You know, not theory, but just connecting theory to practice. So that's where public intellectualism comes in, where you move beyond the borders of the traditional university environment. And so through those musings, I use a lot of humor to convey and connect on critical social, cultural, and political issues, including economic issues of the day-to-day experiences. One of the best forms of teaching, if you look at scientific teaching methodology, is storytelling. We use storytelling a lot in teaching. So musings are part of that. You know, you find it sometimes it's comical, it's satirical, or it's got a sense of humor. But beneath that humor, there's a message that is being communicated, and it has to be done in very few words. It doesn't have to be a long paragraph, because people don't have time to read long things. Make it very short and get to the point, but convey your message accurately. And sometimes it can be a bit, depending on the audience. Some people react differently. Some people might take it personal because maybe you strike a raw nerve. But when they go to sleep, they'll know that I'm speaking the truth.
Professor, there's power in brevity. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot as we dive into our topic today. Sure. I'll quote one of your musings. Yeah, sure. Then I'll put you on the spot. In fact, the reason I'm quoting this one is because I was chatting with one CEO the other day, and she quoted this one, and I'm going to use. So this was done a few days ago. You said their new CEO was a lady. She had impeccable credentials. The employees could not find any faults in her. All they said was that she's not married. Marriage became a qualification. What was running through your mind?
Great question. Again, if you look in the social sciences, in sociology and so forth, there's what we call sexual stereotypes. Even in leadership and management, there are things like trait theory. there's a view that, you know, women cannot be leaders and so forth based on the agenda and so forth, which is very retrogressive. Okay, we cannot discriminate in this age and time on the basis of gender. Even assignment of roles, you know, we can't just say women can't be leaders, can't be managers, women have to be married for them to be leaders. It doesn't work like that. That's an old way of thinking. Okay, so that musing came from that background to say, look, we are all human beings. We need to treat women and men fairly across the board without discrimination. So, and these are things you're going to find even in HR policies of organizations, but now drafted and couched as a musing. So we are smiling, we are laughing, but we are learning about what the ideal scenario should be out there in the workplace, in universities, in society across the board. The fact that somebody's not married doesn't mean that they're not good enough to perform a particular task, both for men and women. You don't have to be married to, I mean, we've had presidents who were bachelors. In Botswana, the president was a bachelor, you know, the former president, you know. So these things, you know, we need to move away from those type of stereotypes. So that was what was the driving force behind that. You know, I was speaking for the voiceless, trying to communicate a message for women who feel somewhat, you know, mistreated or not given a fair chance simply because of their marital status. It's unfair to treat people like that. So that's where that musing was coming from.
Awesome. I like that. Now, those who are following us, please feel free to send your question or questions in the comment section. Just type your question and we'll do our best to ensure that that question is addressed. And just give us feedback and just give us your take on what we are discussing on today. All right. So back to the future. Professor, 2020 has been one of the very difficult years, and probably one that will be remembered more about the COVID-19 pandemic more than anything else. That's globally. So, and in the next few days, 2021 will be gone. We'll be crossing into 2021. So maybe as we just focus on our topic today, how would you summarize 2020 from your perspective?
2020 has been a very trying year. We have lost a number of people from COVID-19. Our condolences to families that have lost friends, family members, relatives, you know, and so forth, workmates, colleagues. It's not easy. It's been very trying. And others, we still have people who are fighting for their lives in hospitals and so forth. So it's been a very challenging year. And also the impact of COVID-19 on the economies cannot be, you know, underestimated. You know, we are talking of, you know, people losing jobs because of COVID-19, especially, for example, in, you know, if you look at industries like the hotel industry, entertainment, the restaurants and so forth, you know, most of these places are now closed in the Western world. You know, if you have to buy food, you just have to do a drive-through. You're not going to dine at a restaurant. So most of these young people who work for, you know, in these restaurants don't have jobs. So things have really impacted households because it trickles down to the households, the incomes and so forth. It doesn't just end at the workplace. So it's been a challenging year, but we do hope that we can come through this successfully with the right policies in place. We need to prepare for the post-COVID environment as we are dealing with the present, what we call ambidexterity. Ambidexterity basically is we are addressing current problems, but we are also anticipating future problems and the future scenario. So you live in two places, in the present and in the future. That's ambidexterity. We need those type of arrangements, a strategic management philosophy. So we need to think ahead whilst we are trying to grapple with it. The future of work. How will work look like tomorrow? Whilst today presents us with these challenges, within with that scenario again, there are some opportunities that come up. For example, I can now be able to offer classes to my students in South Africa without traveling to South Africa whilst I'm with my family here, through the use of internet. Okay, there are a lot of people now, even medical doctors, who are working, you know, via the digital platform. You know, they don't have to physically meet their patients. They can do a video conference and prescribe medication and so forth. So the world is changing. The way we work is changing, and we have to rethink the future of work. It opens up opportunities, for example, for people who don't want to travel, who don't like traveling, or who don't want to relocate, maybe for family reasons. You can keep a job from wherever you are and keep working as long as you're delivering on the tasks and in time and so forth, and you're able to talk to your clients and so forth. So that's the world in which we are. It's created challenges. At the same time, it's opened up opportunities.
Yeah, awesome. So we have to live both in the present and with foresight, of the future. That's interesting. And now, in June earlier in the year, when we hosted you, we were looking at leadership in turbulent times, and I think it was an interesting discussion, and you really brought in very important points. And probably as we talk about 2021 or going into 2021, probably we can, because I checked, I think one of your posts, or was it in the video, where you're saying, we may not necessarily predict the future, but we can use the facts, which we know and the past, the present and the past, in order to predict the future. So maybe looking at what has happened in the COVID-19 pandemic, what is, from the leadership point of view, what are some of the key lessons for leaders across the world?
Yeah, thanks, Webster. The future, definitely, we don't have full information about the future. The economists will tell you that information asymmetries, issues of agency and so forth. The cost of gathering information. If you don't have inside information about what's happening, within the internal environment, and you're an outsider, it poses those challenges. So we don't have full information about the future, but we have enough information about the present.
Yeah.
And we have enough information about the past. We have the facts. Based on the repeatability of certain facts and trends in the market, we can come up with scenario planning. What in military they call scenario planning, and leadership scenario, they call it scenario planning. This can help you to project the trends that are likely to occur in the coming future. Okay, so then you come up with a theory. So this is the best way and the best chance that that we have to deal with the future. Again, it comes back to ambidexterity. We have the present. We can use the present and the past to at least anticipate or contemplate events in the future, and then we adapt. When the scenarios change in the future, you can easily adapt. These are not rigid models. You can easily adapt. It's about strategic thinking, moving from strategic planning to strategic thinking. Strategic planning is an old way of doing business. The language now is more about strategic thinking, because it's broader than a plan. Plans can be very rigid, and things change sometimes. So it's about the thought process rather than the plan itself.
I love that, and I'm so passionate about strategic leadership, as it were. So so given what you have said, Professor, how should one approach 2021 in terms of planning? You've mentioned planning, but then given what you have said, how does someone approach 2021? I know at the beginning of the year, there's this notion of making resolutions, making plans at the beginning of the year. And given what has happened in 2020, I don't know if we have to repeat the same approach, or we need a different approach to a planning or making resolutions for a year.
Resolutions are basically like plans, so to say. And like I said, scenarios change depending on what's happening in the environment. Now we have what we're calling digital disruption, for example, in the digital world. And this is tying in with innovation and so forth. The platform is changed completely. When I was at university, we had cassette recorders. Okay, you put your cassette there. If the tape is not running, you remove it with a pen, you unwind or rewind, that sort of thing. Okay. Then we moved to CDs. We are no longer using CDs. Now we have iPods. and so forth. We used to have Kodak, for example. You know, you process your films and so forth. You know, if you take a photo, you wait for a week or so before they process the photo. But now everything is on a smartphone, and that smartphone has your music as well. You know, there's no need for a CD. It's got everything in there. So certain companies that have not been able to adapt to know the innovation that's taking place in the market have lost out business. You know, it's the same thing with life. If you don't adapt, you're too rigid, you'll be left out. Okay, it's important to adapt. Adaptability is unavoidable. You have to be attuned to what's happening in the environment. So you can have plans, you can have resolutions, but if there are changes in the environment, you need to be flexible. You need to be agile enough to adapt. Okay, and it comes with even careers. It's a little bit dangerous now. I know there's a school of thought which talks about specializing in one career. Yes, specialization is good. There's nobody's questioning that, but you have to be ready to adapt. Okay, sometimes you need a sort of a primary and a secondary career path in case of disruptions in the environment. Yes, you could be lucky with just one career path and you're able to move around because you're well connected, your networks and so forth. But not everybody has that, gift or opportunity. So you need to anticipate their challenges. What are some of the threats out there? Sort of a SWOT analysis. Strength, weaknesses, opportunities in the environment. Then you get into Michael Porter's 5 forces, to position yourself like a product or a service in the environment. Human beings actually provide a service when you're working. So, so you can use those models to actually think ahead of the coming year and even the year after as you plan for your businesses, for yourself, for your life, and for your career. It's good to have aspirations. Don't get me wrong. It's good to have aspirations. These are the goals towards which I'm aspiring. But it's also good to be awake to the fact that sometimes we have to do what we call pivoting in strategic management. Pivoting is like basketball. I wanted to go to the left, but I realized there are 4 guys here who are going to defend. I'll move to the right, as long as I can get to the basket. So we call that pivoting. So you have to use different strategies. Also, there's what we call experimentation. Okay, you can experiment with different strategies or different model, especially in the area of innovation. You put out something there, a little small product in its crude and refined state. You're testing the market. If the product is selling, if your video conferences, they're attracting a lot of hits, you test them out there. When you get what we call an MVP, most viable product, you can then roll out the program. Okay, rather than sit and being too cynical and too skeptical, this won't work. No, that's not a good idea. Try out a product, try out a service, try out your skills. If you see that it's attracting or generating a lot of interest or demand, then you can roll it out. Okay, so it's experimentation. So we have to try different models. So the coming year for me, especially for the younger generation, learn to be open-minded. Don't be so fixated on one thing. Be open-minded. Be open to new ideas. We are living in very different times. I've spoken about digital disruption, for example. It has opened up a new avenue for people to work. Okay, people are making millions just by making small apps, for example, and then they post them maybe on Apple, or they sell them through another digital platform. You become a millionaire if your app is selling at maybe $1.99, and you sell to maybe a target of maybe 1 million people. You're already a millionaire just from that little app. So the world has changed so much in terms of opportunities out there, and we should grow entrepreneurship. Definitely for economies, we need to grow the middle class. This is really the bulk, the engine of the future. You look at Africa, the generation of Africans, relatively younger population. So we need to open up avenue for jobs, job creation, inclusive jobs, and grow the culture of entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial zeal. So that's how I would look at it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Agility. Now, I was following, I think, on one of your posts, you did share some skill you acquired in digital, something was it from the UK or something? Now, as you tell us a little bit about that, I want to find out, or what would be your advice in terms of the relevant skills that someone should really maybe try to focus on as we go into 2021 and beyond, given the unprecedented times and how things are just unfolding. What are some of the key skills? And could it be the reason that you haven't closed the chapter in terms of learning on your part?
Yeah. Those who are not prepared to learn would definitely remain behind. There's no doubt about that. And great leaders are people who are willing to listen and who are willing to learn. You know, if you close your mind to learning, you think you know it all. Look, when I did my MBA, I'm a lawyer with an MBA. When I did my MBA in 94 to 95, we're talking about close to what, more than 20 years? So much has happened in between that time. So I've had to do some executive leadership programs to update my knowledge on the latest trends that are happening in the market. All this stuff of digital disruption was not there. Okay. So, you know, yes, you can read a textbook and so forth, but it also helps if you listen to the experts. Okay. So the course that you're talking about, which I did in digital disruption, was with ENSED, which is a very prestigious business school based in France and Singapore. And I did a follow-up course with London Business School, another prestigious business school based in the UK, on digital disruption and strategy and management. So these are new concepts that are coming up, and you know, you need to stay attuned. But to answer your question, in terms of skill set, there is no hard and fast rule about that. It all depends what we call contingency theory. It all depends on the industry and the nature of what you're doing, the nature of your work. Certain jobs, for example, require multiple skill set. Other jobs you can do with one skill. But again, like I said, you need to audit the environment. For example, I do foresee a situation now where lawyers, for example, a lot of them can work from home. Or legal drafting, you can do that stuff from home. As long as you've got precedents and model agreements, you can do that stuff. You can negotiate a project, or you know, if it's a financial transaction, you can do it via video conference. Okay, so when we get to that stage, you know, then you begin to find eventually, you know, artificial intelligence comes in where things become computerized eventually, and we may not need too many people to do that work. Okay, because it's too costly to hire people, so we automate the systems, and the computer is able to generate these legal agreements. You know, one guy just fills in maybe 1,000 legal agreements, which could have been done by maybe 10 people, because much of the stuff is automated. So what would that tell us now when you go to capital intensive technology? What would be the impact on jobs for people and incomes in households? It means some people might lose jobs. That's the danger with capital intensity technology. It's a threat on jobs or people. So you may want to balance, you know, capital intensity with labor intensity, you know, to strike a balance somewhere to keep people employed. So we have to be attuned to those type of issues that are happening in the industry, wherever we are. The world is changing so much. Even like I said, doctors, some of them, as long as it's not surgical staff, they don't have to be in the surgical room. They can see a patient online, you know, talk to a patient, you know, prescribe medication and so forth. IT people, a lot of companies now subcontract IT experts from India, for example, Chennai. Okay, you've got your cable network company here in the US, and you call them up, say, look, my internet is moving slow. They say, okay, we'll connect you. The person you're talking to is based in Chennai, India. You know, that's what's happening now. Digital disruption. You know, so the world is changing. So we need to be awake to this, and even governments need to be prepared for tomorrow.
True. That's brilliant, Prof. And you know, back here, I mean, during this period of the global pandemic, we have seen companies downsizing. We have seen companies maybe operating at half scale or reduced number of employees. And it has actually made some companies think twice on having those numbers in some of those companies. Say, all right, if we are able to run with 5 people instead of 10, why should we continue running with 10 people? So the question is, like to some of us who are in employment, what should I do for me to be among the 5 that are retained by the company? Because definitely companies will downsize by virtue of all these developments, technology and whatnot. But then the question is, how do you position yourself to be among those dependable employees to the extent, even when, you know, the company wants to downsize, you are still invaluable, so to speak. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, Professor.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give two scenarios: the ideal scenario and the realistic scenario. Let me start with the ideal scenario. In the ideal scenario, basically, you know, just like three generic strategies that Michael Porter points out in much of his literature. One, differentiation. Two, focus. Three, cost leadership. Same thing with a product, with a service. Human beings provide a service. It's the same philosophy. So if you're very well specialized in your job, for example, you're a neurosurgeon, okay, the chances of being replaced is not easy because of your area of specialty. You're too specialized, okay? So people who are highly specialized, who are offering unique services and who have unique skills, it's very difficult to replace those type of people. You need them. You have no choice, okay? So they have differentiated themselves in the market. They've stood out, okay?
Yeah.
And they've an area of focus where they are focusing, you know. And thirdly, it's less costly to start hiring somebody you're going to experiment on when you have somebody who's already too good at what they do. So let's keep this guy, okay? So it's the same philosophy. That's the idealistic scenario in the ideal situation. In reality, however, sometimes it also depends on cronies. Chaps look out for themselves. If you're not in the network, they'll cut you out. They remain with friends, people they drink with, people they joke with, people of their same skin color. There are all these dynamics. Same tribe,
can you amplify?
Same ethnic group. You know, there are all these dynamics. They are not written anywhere, but with experience, we know that these things are there. You may be very good at what you do, but if you're not one of them, they'll cut you out. You know, so that's reality. I don't like pretending. That's reality. These things are there in life. It's called organizational politics, in organizational behavior and psychology. These things happen. So one way to deal with around this is to be try to get into their network. Once you key into their network, you become one of them. If they play golf, you play golf as well. Okay. If their dogs go, they take their dogs for a walk. You take your dog for a walk with them as well. Be one of them. Don't be too different, because otherwise you're an outlier. You know, it's the same thing even in sports. You know, if you're in high school, whatever the other guys are doing, if you're not part of that, you'll be marginalized and segregated. You know, it's the same philosophy. It's a very challenging thing to do. There are ethical issues, because sometimes you know, they may be doing unethical things. So how do you deal with that? You know, so you have to strike a balance. But by and large, hopefully, it's not unethical. It's ethical stuff they're doing. You know, try to be part of the team. That's very, very important, because at a certain point, it's not just technical skills. People bring in what they call people skills and team skills. Oh, he's good, but he's not a team player. Oh, she's good, but she's got attitude. You know, so they bring in these variables, soft variables, which you cannot quantify, and they label you. You're gone.
True. Very insightful. I'm sure many people have been helped by that, which is very good. Now, all right, those who are following us, please, in the comment section, you can drop your question or your comment. I'll now read out a few comments and questions. We only have about under 15 minutes to wind up, and be sure to drop your comment or your question within that time. So, Kiki Lubuta. So what it is there are people who are posting questions on Professor Kenneth Mwenda's Facebook page. Then there are some posting on the Presson Facebook page, as well as on my personal page. So I will prioritize those on the Presson Foundation. Let me say it's quicker. It's easier for me to read the comments that are on the Presson Foundation page, but I'll try my best also to check on these other Facebook pages. So Kiki Lubuta says, this is a question from Keti Mnyenyembe. This morning I saw awards awarded to several Zambians, and I was wondering why academic or intellectual awards were missing. It was all social awards. A student in higher education who values intellectual growth and academic excellence. I got concerned that intellectual excellence is not getting recognized and embraced in Zambia. Quite worrisome. What are your thoughts on this as a professor and an intellectual? What's your advice? As a country, we need to celebrate knowledge. Your quick comment on that, Professor.
Yeah, thank you so much, Katie, for that. Katie Munyanyembe, thank you so much for that question. Quite right, you're absolutely right. We haven't cultivated a culture of intellectual excellence in our part of the world. Sadly, we celebrate more social sort of engagements. We have a lot of social celebrities, but in fact, intellectual excellence is frowned upon. It's seen as a sin, or you've done something wrong to go to school, and it's a wrong signal. We are sending a wrong signal to young people that the only way you can make it in life is to be a social celebrity or become a politician or become a political cadre. It's a wrong. If you look at economies that have excelled, that are doing pretty well economic growth and development, Singapore, for example, they invested heavily in knowledge, okay, to be where, South Korea, they invested heavily in knowledge, okay. That's where you see the Samsung phones coming in and so forth. At one time, even becoming a threat to Apple products, okay. They invested heavily in knowledge and in technology, okay. It was not just social, whatever, or politics and that sort of thing. Most economies that have been seen to move forward, have invested heavily in knowledge. Even in the US, for example, if you look at the philosophy of attracting the best IT people from maybe Asia, India, and so forth, they try to bring in the best of what the world can offer out there. Okay, we have to have that philosophy. Otherwise, we are not going to go anywhere. When you promote a culture of mediocrity, I'm sorry to say, you don't expect much. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll give you a typical example. I follow trends, but I think first of all, let me acknowledge and congratulate my friends who are doing great job. For example, at UTH, some medical doctor surgeons. I see some of the stuff that they are doing there. They are really doing great stuff out there. In the field of cardiology, neurosurgery, and so forth. They're doing exceptionally brilliant stuff. Those are things we need to be celebrating. Okay, those type of things, not who's got the best shoe, who's in the best bikini on social media. Those type of things. Leave them for entertainment industry. But if we have to have role models in society, our mindset, what we call a paradigm shift, our mindset has to change.
Yeah.
Okay. Of course, academia and intellectualism is not everything. Someone will tell you school is not everything, but I'll tell you ignorance is not everything.
I like that. Yeah. All right. So we're going to try to be brief in answering these so that we try to, address as many as we can. So Subulwa Mutengu says, great conversation, very helpful. Jenny says, we can hear you loud and clear. Bob Uli says, insightful. Gyros Miti, following from home in Lusaka. Mtalemwai Mwamba saying, stay attuned, keep up with the changing times stroke trends, otherwise you get left behind. All right, so keep those comments coming. Let me read out some more. So Danny Chisha, true, they need to think and realize that post-COVID-19, digital interaction will be as norm. This poses one new opportunities, two new challenges. It's important for one to set the mind on either of the sides. Mulila Simfukwe watching, Patrick Malisawa, strategic thinking, Lizzie Bocher, strategic thinking, Sharon Mapulanga, ambidexterity, that was what Prof was talking about. Yeah. Samuel Mwanza, Prof, following Prof, Lizzie says, again, we need to grow the middle class by growing the culture of entrepreneurship. Sampi Mutepuka, this man has a lot of academic and corporate experience to share. Malama Grace Mulayamba Zimba says, following Prof, Chisenga following, Sharon Maplanga, okay, has a comment. Some companies have even closed some, if not most of the branches. Banks didn't see the village banking groups, which has led to most people saving their incomes with such and not taking them to the banks. Village banking has offered an opportunity of earning a profit when banks deduct from these savings for maintaining accounts. They also need strategies to attract such groups. They need strategies to stay afloat and maintain their labor force. Prof, I don't know if you're aware about the village banking concept. Would you have any
Yes.
comments on that
Yes.
innovation?
Okay, great. That's mainly in the area of access to finance. I think now that falls principally in the domain of, for Zambia, the Central Bank of Zambia. Regulation of some of these. In fact, one of my areas of expertise, I've written a book on, in fact, 2 books on banking regulation. One on specifically on Zambia, published by Pretoria University Law Press. The other one published in the UK by Routledge. So that's a domain in which the central bank has been doing fairly good work, regulating these small deposit-taking institutions in the rural areas, providing credit support to women, rural farmers, and so forth. But of course, there's scope for improvement, especially in the regulatory environment. I was in touch with Dr. Denny Karialia, the former governor, before he left, discussing some of these issues. But yeah, there's scope for room for improvement in that area. And I'm hopeful that the central bank is doing a great job, and we should be good on that front.
Awesome. All right, let me read some more comments. This is Lydia Chan. Oh, our matron. Willis Mkosha and 3 others. All right, they are following. Eddie Rick. Lovely. Okay, he's got some questions. The professor who will take time to chat with any, regardless of status in society. Wow. Much respect, Professor Kenneth Mwenda. Yeah, so here's a question from Eddie Rick. All right. Eddie Rick. Question: would you consider a government position if it was offered to you, such as Minister of Justice? Before you answer that one, let me pose some more questions. Or there's a second question from the same person. I hope you have taken note of that, Professor. People want you back here in a government position. All right, Professor, I'll give his views. Second question: of late, we've read and heard how some universities at Zambia have started dying or denying some Zambian degrees who want to do master's degrees outside. If this is true, what education reforms would you recommend to improve the education standards that are globally acceptable as a scholar? Okay, those 2 questions, Professor.
Okay, first, the issue of service to government. It would be an honorable thing to do to save one's country, but the discretion lies with the powers that be to sort of extend an invitation. And then I would, of course, have to consult with my family. My wife is a physician by profession, medical doctor, with specialty in public health. She's branched into public health, and our son. So there are many factors to take into account, but I'm open to different ideas. Zambia is my home country. I'm a patriotic Zambian, and I must stress, for the record, that I do not belong to any political party, and I do not canvass political views on social media or in any in other environment where you'll find me. You will not find me championing views of a political party. I'm a professional. I work like a surgeon. Whether you're black or white, green or blue, I will operate on you. That's the second answer to that. So whichever government is in power, I'm a Zambian, number one. I don't subscribe to the notion of which political party do you belong to, or which tribe. That doesn't apply to me. I'm above that. Secondly, turning to the issue of education, I think we need to cultivate a culture of writing, scholarly writing. That's very important. When universities are being ranked, the people who rank universities usually they use the internet, okay? Because they don't do physical visits to these universities, so they usually use the internet. So if your scholars are not very visible in terms of their output, their research, their publications out there, they are not. Your scholars are not appearing in some of the top journals and stuff like that. It will affect your rankings, no doubt. Also, how you position yourself, your websites, and the information you put out. Remember, the website is the interface with the client out there in the external world. If you don't showcase the talent that you have, you don't showcase what you're doing, people will judge you based on what they'll read on your internet, okay, and on other sites. So it's important that universities are attuned to that, how to market themselves, digital marketing, how to market themselves using the digital platform. Because these people who rank these universities, like I said, they hardly do on-site visits. You see, in banking supervision, for example, we have what you call on-site and off-site supervision. But the guys who do ranking just do off-site supervision remotely. They'll make an assessment based on hits and so forth. They'll go into Google Scholar, look at the indexes. Okay, these guys, we rank them here. Okay, look at employability, how many people, and that sort of thing. Now, that's one dimension, publication. The teaching part, we've done it very well. There are three things that an academic does. One, and most importantly, research. Two, teaching excellence. Three, service to community. These are the three core themes of academia. Okay, the research part, we've sort of neglected that front. There are people publishing, don't get me wrong, there are people but we don't have a critical mass, okay, or people who are focused in scholarly work, partly because of the economic environment. People are chasing consultancies, projects, they have to make ends meet, so it's a bit rough. We understand, but still you can't drop the ball. If you just committed to, look, I have a full-time job, but I'm able to write and publish. Okay, I have to create time for myself. I've just finished writing a book on international law and contemporary issues in the global economy. Hopefully it should be coming out this year. You can create time for that. Yeah, so that's where we are. The other thing I want to stress is if you don't have enough of your people teaching in these countries that are trying to look down on your educational systems, this is what happens. Okay, the more Zambians, the more people we get, or if you're South African, the more South Africans. If you're Namibian, the more Namibians. If you're Malawian, the more Malawians you get teaching, say, in the United Kingdom. The British will not question your university standards because they have amongst themselves people who are teaching in their university. That's what it's all about. You cannot question something that you're a part of, because look, if the guy is the dean of a school in the UK at the law school, how can you question degrees from the university where he started from when he's your boss, he's the dean? Okay, so you have to understand the importance of the diaspora. The diaspora sends signals, right signals to the market, the global community, that this is what Zambia is capable of producing. Yeah.
Awesome. Let me read out some more questions and comments, and as we wind down in the next few minutes. Ayaki Kabambe says, Africa shall forever be a playground of those who have invested in knowledge and have invested in science. The mentality of manna from heaven will not take us anywhere. Sharon Mapulanga says, Minister of Education will be good as well. Prof, Minister of Education will be good as well. And next year we're going to the polls. Are you considering coming to be part of what is happening at home? Okay, I'll leave you to answer that. But before you do, let me just read out two more. Samuel Mwansa, Prof, can you advise a fresh graduate to pursue entrepreneurship route first before considering employable job? Then Tirin Matongo, with new government next year, it will be taken to its normal status, which is a town, not city. I'm not sure about this. Anyway, let me get your thoughts from this.
Yes, Zambia is coming up for elections in August 2021. In January, we have Uganda. Uganda is coming up for elections in January 2021. Both countries are having elections on a Thursday. Zambia is a Thursday, Uganda is a Thursday. There have been some constitutional amendments, both in Zambia and Uganda. I think 1975, Uganda, they removed the two-term. Then 2017, they also removed the age requirement that president cannot be above the age of 75. We have had similar, constitutional amendments in Zambia. I remember at one time, the MMD government passed a constitutional amendment that if you've been to be president, you have to have lived in Zambia continuously for a period of 10 years. And your father must have been born in Zambia or something. There was somebody they were targeting anyway. We all know the story. It was very clear. There was, somebody they were trying to target. Okay, now that's history. As to whether I will be voting, we don't have a mechanism or procedure that allows Zambians in the diaspora to vote whilst they're out here in the diaspora. I would have to fly into the country to vote. But there's COVID situation. We are all very wary of travel. So Unfortunately, I might not be able to make it, but I can't. I could be in Zambia. I'm not sure about that. We'll see how the COVID situation turns out. Different portfolio in terms of ministerial guidance. Again, I'm a very open-minded person, and I take each day as it comes. And mind you, to be minister doesn't simply mean you're the person who knows everything. No, a good leader surrounds himself with some of the best people. So you need a very good permanent secretary. You need a very good team, and very good rapport also with the head of state. It's very important, because the head of state receives a lot of distractions from other opportunistic people who may want to block your appointments or your tenure. It's politics. It's cutthroat.
Yeah.
That's what it is. It's not child's play. The president can be misinformed about your agenda, and he may, depending on the intelligence he's getting, he may have a different view of who you are until he meets you. Say, this guy is actually a nice guy. I didn't know he was a nice guy. So there are all these things that you have to factor in. But certainly West Africa, for example, has done extremely well by tapping into the diaspora, getting the exceptional people into these strategic positions. Right now, as we speak, Zimbabwe got Professor Mutuli Nube from Oxford. He used to be chief economist at Africa Development Bank. Before that, he was dean at Wits Business School in South Africa. Okay, he's now the Minister of Finance. Okay, when he left ADB, he went to Oxford to teach. Now he's Minister of Finance. We've seen it. Nigeria got Ngozi from the World Bank, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo, who's now vying for the WTO position. I'm not sure what the current state is for the elections there. As head of WTO, she was our managing director, vice president. She went and became Minister of Finance in Nigeria twice. You look at Cote d'Ivoire. There was a guy who was Minister of Energy there. Tano, he was vice president at IFC. The current president of Cote d'Ivoire, Ouattara, was at IMF. At a very senior level. So there are countries who've done it, but it's not a typical culture in Southern Africa. Southern Africa, generally speaking, it's not a typical culture. We only get people when they're retired. For example, Dr. Gondo in Malawi, when he retired from the IMF, he became Minister of Finance. We had Dr. Denny Kalialia when he retired from the World Bank, then he became Bank of. We don't get them at their prime when they're still in circulation. So
probably we need a paradigm shift.
Exactly.
And based on what you have said, Professor, and given that Zambia is going to the polls next year, and Uganda, you have mentioned Uganda as well, what kind of leaders do we need to transform this nation? I know politics, you are speaking objectively here as a professional. And I just want your comment in terms of, we have so many young people, for instance, that are aspiring to go to contest some of these positions. But from where you sit, what kind of leadership is going to transform Zambia, and not just Zambia, Africa across? Okay. Do we need...
Yeah, great question. Before I hit on that, let me just quickly answer the question on entrepreneurship and going for career jobs and so forth. That was a brilliant question from someone once. If you can make money, there's nothing wrong. You can get into entrepreneurship to support or finance some of your studies. It's doable. All you need is discipline. If you can discipline yourself and stay focused, don't lose track. Especially in this environment where we are, you cannot rely entirely on maybe your guardians or your parents. If you can supplement with resources, there's nothing wrong with that. And you have to understand that education, not everybody has to be looking at being employed. You can create employment through entrepreneurship and hire people. Okay, that's how we have guys like Bill Gates. Okay, we have to get into that culture that life is not all about being employed, but you can also create employment as young as you are, depending on your entrepreneurial zeal. That's number one. Now, coming to your question on leadership, definitely for the large part, issues of the argument has been about strong institutions. We need strong institutions from a governance point of view in Africa to fight corruption, to ensure that the judiciary is free and fair and that sort of thing. These are good economic arguments, and I agree 100%. But the institutions can only come about with visionary leadership. They are not just born from the abstract.
Yeah,
somebody has to provide that leadership to build these institutions. And the greatest challenge that we are facing in Africa today is quality leadership. I was recording on Voice of America yesterday. We had a very good discussion. It will air on Wednesday, a Christmas special. And we were discussing some of these things. I don't want to preempt them. You can watch this coming Wednesday's Straight Talk Africa. Yeah, we had the recording yesterday. But these are some of the issues we discussed. We need vision. What we've struggled with in Africa, for the large part, sub-Saharan Africa, is to replicate the generation of independence leadership, especially in their early years of after getting independent. Towards the end, some of them got compromised because they'd been in power too long. Absolute power corrupts, as you know. But in the early years, you could see the Kenneth Kaundas, you could see the Nyereres, you could see the Kamuzu Bandas, you could see the Kwame Nkrumahs, even the Patrice Lumumbas, Prime Minister of Congo DRC, although he never lasted long. But the short time he was in before he got into power, if you read his speeches, you'll be moved. If you follow his history, he was at a different level, despite having an average education. The Samora Machels, if you read Samora Machels' speeches even today, you will know that this guy was Eduardo Mondlane. Okay, even the levels of intellectuals that we had in the 70s is very different. We had the Aumika Cabrals, we had the Frantz Fanon, we had the Samir Amins, we had the Achim Afejes in South Africa. He was in exile. If you read their work today, you see the difference with what we currently have. We've not only lost on political leadership, but also on thought leadership. But we can learn from the past. It's not too late.
Awesome. I love that. I think, was it in the recent past, Zambia, I think there was a key development in the history of Zambia where I think MPs were required to have a minimum qualification of grade 12. From your point of view, is it enough or do we need more?
The Human Rights Act, people who subscribe to, I do as well, but the sort of extreme human rights advocates will tell you don't need that. Okay, but human rights have, in my view, should always be viewed in context. Human rights do not operate in the abstract. Even societies that are developed today that talk of human rights, they did not start from the scratch with an advocacy of human rights. No, they started from highly authoritarian, exploitative systems. If you look at historical materialism from slave mode of production to the feudal, you can see that it was an exploitative system. Okay, then eventually they are where they are today. But I'm not saying that exploitation is good. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that let's not be oblivious of the fact that certain evils will happen as you move on. Even if you look at the field of medicine, when doctors began to discover process of surgery, they would just grab people from the streets who are drunk and cut on them and start operating. That's how it all started, as crude as it was. But here we are today. In battlefield, there are going to be victims, sometimes innocent people. It's sad. We're not saying it's a good thing. It's a sad thing. But countries go to war. Okay, so we need to be awake to these realities. That we have to strike a balance. Of course, we don't want human tragedies, but at the same time, we have to know that we need to move the envelope, especially towards economic determinism, rather than the issue of abstract human rights. We don't have much time to start discussing human rights that are going to delay our development agenda. That's my argument.
Awesome. All right. As we went down, time has really gone very fast. All right. I'll read the last set of comments, and then I'll ask you to just wrap up our discussion today, Professor. So those who've joined us, we are live today on the Presson Leadership Forum, of course, under the topic Back to the Future, with a specific focus on 2021 in terms of getting people ready, or especially leaders, just getting leaders prepared for 2021. All right, so last one, Mukwakwa says, powerful prof, live long. Miselos Sitalikas says, ideally, in the view of digital disruption, what programs in universities should be integrated or those that can be scrapped off? Mtalemwai Mwenda says, research, teaching excellence, service to community. Kiki Lubuta says, thanks, Prof, one of the best minds of this age. Mtalemwai Mwenda again says, the diaspora sends never realized this. Mtalemwai again says, So if your citizens are in the diaspora, the message that goes to the international community, learning. Kiki again says, we always learn so much from you, Prof. Thank you for the knowledge you share. Let those who have ears and learn. Kiki says, again, you inspire us, Prof. We are proud of you. Furthermore, I agree. Having Professor Mwenda, Minister of Justice or Education, or Minister of Education would push our country forward this knowledge. I can imagine a cabinet having 3 or 4 of your like professor. I would imagine what kind of a cabinet it would be. Well, that's my wish. However, how do you wrap up today's discussion, Professor?
Yeah, thank you so much, Webster. And I just want to add that I think as I know the audience is wider than Zambia, but speaking for Zambia, we have many Zambians who are doing great things out there. I'll give you, for example, my very good friend and brother, Professor Jerry Nkombo-Muka, who's dean of a top business school in United Arab Emirates. He was associate dean here at Murray State University in Kentucky in the US for a long time. Exceptionally brilliant mind. I've co-authored a lot of works with him. These are some of the Zambians who stand out. We have Zambians at the World Bank. We have Zambians at the International Monetary Fund. We have Zambians at the United Nations. Many people don't know about them, but there are guys and ladies who are doing stuff out there. We need to appreciate our own. Nobody's going to appreciate you if you don't appreciate your own. You know, one thing I've learned from the Americans, there's a concept of American exceptionalism. Wherever Americans are, whether it's at the Olympics, they are the best and they come out the best. You have to have that philosophy of exceptionalism as a national.
All right. Professor Kenneth Mwenda, it's been a pleasure having you on, and we look forward to having.
Yeah, and just one more thing, I've just remembered before I close. For young people who there was a question that came up. For young people who are looking into opportunities of careers, it's very important that you consider interdisciplinary approaches. The world is changing. It's too risky to remain in one profession. Like I gave an example of myself. I'm a lawyer, but I've got doctorates in economics and law, as well as an MBA. One of my higher doctorates is in economic science. My wife is a medical doctor, but she has an MB and an MPH. Now she's a director of public health. So you cannot afford to be so rigid to just say, me, I'm a lawyer, I just want to do law. Okay, fine, stay in that law thing. But when digital disruption comes and lawyers, we don't need lawyers, we can use automated systems, you know what to do. So you got to think strategically, audit your environment. Yeah.
Wow, those who are insurers like me, you shouldn't just think about and just remain in the insurance corner. You have to think about other areas so that you become
exactly
complements. Yeah. But I like what you said about that. Is it basketball?
Pivoting. Yeah.
Kind of example you use. Pivoting. You have your pivot, which is the anchor of your qualifications and so on and so forth, but then be able to continue learning. In Japanese, there's a concept called Kaizen, which is continuous movement.
Yes.
You keep on improving as you go on. All right, so we're going to leave it there. Professor Kenneth Mwenda, thank you so much for the program, and those who've been following us, thank you so much. And remember to like our Facebook page, that is Presson. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also on LinkedIn. And from me, your host, Webster Tombo Jr., the chairperson of the Presson Foundation, I wish to say thank you so much on behalf of the foundation, and we wish you a Merry Christmas and a prosperous 2021. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.